friends, people I never knew, people I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, front of acres with a mansion on my land. Fools, jacuzzis, and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This zone so fast. Ain't got your ladies and prime time is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of primetime.
Yeah, man, it's primetime fantasy football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright. Yeah.
Welcome to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football presented by Next Level Radio, the Primetime Fantasy Football podcast. I am one of your three hosts, Adam Gorey. Sitting alongside of me in studio, Joe Webster, and calling from Ohio this week, our man on the town, Steve Richards, who always seems like he's calling from somewhere new each week.
Happy Blake Bortles week, Blake and Bortles.
Yeah, this was kind of the week. A couple new quarterbacks coming in, including Teddy Bridgewater, who seems like he will be starting the rest of the season since Matt Castle's on IR, but we can talk about that a little later. Let's start off. Well, first off, let me remind everybody that if you want to ask any of us questions between now and game time, you can tweet us at AdamNextLevel, at JoeyWeb32, and at SRichards31. You can email us primetime at nextlevelradioonline.com. That's PRIMETIME at nextlevelradioonline.com. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline, and Twitter at NXTLevelRadio. So let's get things kicked off here. Buys this week. There's a ton of them for some reason. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Denver, St. Louis, Arizona, Seattle. We'll talk to you a little bit about some bye week fill-ins for you. As well as who we hit on our high-lows last week, who we missed on, which weren't too many. We did pretty well last week. So let's get right into things. Week 3, who we were high on. Russell Wilson we hit on. Who picked him? Was that you, Steve, or Joe? You, Steve, or Joe?
That was me. I picked
you.
Russ. Yeah.
Well, he ended up with 258 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1 reception for 17 yards. And 9 rushes for 40 yards for a grand total of 23.02 points. He's on a bye this week. No need to talk about him. Also on a bye this week, Brian Quick. That was me. 2 receptions on 4 targets, 62 yards and a touchdown, 12.2 points. Also on a bye. Ahmad Bradshaw. That was Steve again?
I believe so. I've been saying that he's better than Trent Richardson, so I think I put him on there.
Yeah, no surprise here. 9 rushes, 65 yards. He managed 14.3 points on only a total of 11 touches. 9 rushes, 65 yards, 2 catches on 3 targets for 18 yards and a touchdown. He's going up against the Titans this week. They give up the 13th most this year so far to running backs in 2014. How you guys feeling about Ahmad Bradshaw in week number 4? Joe?
I'm starting him, especially with all of the buys coming up. I know a lot of people are probably going to be struggling at running back, looking for replacements, and I think he's looked better than Trent Richardson in his game, even though he's probably gotten a little less touches. So I think if you got Ahmad Bradshaw right now, he's hot. Keep rolling him.
Steve?
Yeah, he's definitely, I don't know. I didn't really watch the Colts game, full disclosure, but I assume that he's the number one. I guess maybe only if he got 11 touches is not. But he does the most with his touches. So
right.
I mean, he's definitely better than Trent Richardson at this point, certainly for fantasy. And I'm straight in line with Joe. I'm starting him if I have him.
Yeah, last week Bradshaw had 9 carries, 65 yards. Richardson had 14 for 57, so just 5 less carries. I think you see that number go up, and Richardson's. I think it goes more 50-50 as the weeks go on.
That's only good news.
Yeah, until Bradshaw gets hurt, maybe. Chris Ivory, well, I gave a yellow. That was me, 9.6 points. He plays the Lions this week, 6th least to our running backs in 2014. I'm starting him in one league because I have to, but if I didn't have to, if I had another option, like I honestly, because it's the Lions, they're very good run defense, and he's still only seeing about 50%, of snaps with Chris Johnson. I'm kind of, if I can, I'm benching both Johnson and Ivory this week. Joe?
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be hard because of the buys, but if you have the depth at running back, that's probably a good idea.
Steve?
Yeah, it's not a good matchup. I try to avoid Chris Johnson. So I'm going to play Chris Ivory instead of Chris Johnson if I have them both.
Right.
But Lions are a real tough matchup, and they're going to be behind a lot because the Lions will probably give it to them with the Lions being at home and the Jets being terrible as a secondary and the Lions being great as a passing team. So I think the Jets have a chance to be behind, which doesn't mean a lot of running opportunities for Ivory.
Yeah, I mean, he ran really well when he did run on Monday against the Bears, but just not a whole lot of opportunity in general there.
I think it may have been Rex Ryan, one of their coaches. If it wasn't him, it was it must have been Marty Moore.
That he may get more.
That they're expecting him to get more
That was
touches.
Rex
So
Ryan,
so that's a good sign if you're an Ivory owner. But like the whole thing with Ivory, and I said at the beginning of the year, before first game was played, I think Ivory's the more talented back.
Yep.
It's just his injury history that scares me. So, but while he's hot, same thing like Bradshaw, keep rolling him out there.
Yeah, I it's funny because I almost thought about, just because of him getting as many carries as Sean Green last week, and we'll talk about it a little bit, I almost thought about putting in Sankey over Ivory. But I'm still going to go with Ivory just because I think, much like the Jets, the Titans will be down quite a bit against the Colts, so I don't think there's going to be much opportunity. Next up, you got Jeremy Hill. He's also on a bye this week. I gave him a yellow. I think that was Joe.
It was me. Yeah,
7 rushes, 39 yards, and a touchdown for 9.9 points. So just under that 10-point
And it was
mark.
it was the touchdown that saved him. I was a little disappointed.
That's why I left it yellow. If it was like 99 yards,
right,
it was 9.9, I probably would have gave you a green.
Absolutely. I think I was really hoping that we'd see more double-digit numbers for his touches, especially in the rushing category. I thought maybe 10 to 12.
Well, A.J. Green played.
That's what, when we talked about that last week, when I made that, I really expected A.J. Green to be out, and I really thought that would benefit Jeremy Hill. When I saw he played, I thought, well, still, I thought they would have a chance. I thought they'd be up big, and they'd rush the ball up more. So if you started him on my recommendation, you still got a solid day, considering you probably had him in your flex. Yeah,
considering.
But it was that touchdown that saved you.
If you started him, it's probably a pretty deep league.
I don't know why I'm arguing. I'll take it. Yellow is yellow. I'll take it.
Right, yeah. I mean, and like, honestly, I think what we learned from this is that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and even Fridays, nobody knows what they're talking about. You really don't know if somebody's going to play until Sunday. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
Or Monday night.
Right. Arian Foster, nobody was talking about until Sunday morning.
Right.
About him not playing.
Although we were, the podcast saying.
I will say this. If you listened to last week's podcast, you might have already had Alfred Blue on your team prior to it being announced that Foster wasn't going to.
And that was pure luck. I had no idea that Foster was injured at that point.
Nobody was.
So I'm not taking credit for that. But I did pick up Alfred Blue in 2 of my 4 leagues.
So did I in one of them.
There you go.
Before this came out.
Right.
I think on like Thursday I did. So.
Good.
Next up, Travis Kelce. Joe's going to fight for a green here because I gave him a yellow. 3 catches on 4 targets, 36 yards, and a touchdown for 9.6 points.
The way I look at it is if you have if you're not talking about the top 3 tight ends at this point, you may even be one able to put Martellus Bennett the way he's playing right now as a 4th. But if you're not talking about one of the top tight ends right now, if you get 8 points from your tight end, I think that's a really good week.
Yeah.
So I consider 9.6 a very good week for a guy that most people either picked up, or he may still actually be on your waiver wire, or you drafted really late the way I did in all of my leagues.
Steve, I'll leave it up to you. Do you think he gets a green on that?
I do. I'm with Joe on this one.
Okay.
Just because of I don't know. I guess we have 10 as the green threshold, which is certainly fair, but the standards might be different for tight ends.
Right.
Yeah, this is true.
The tight end for fantasy is different.
This is true.
Well, for tight ends is different in fantasy.
Him and the Chiefs take on the Patriots this week. Patriots 4th least the tight end so far this year. How you guys feeling about Kelce this year? He has been this week. He has been getting increased snaps as the weeks have gone on. So are you no worries putting him in this week? I mean, if you have him on your team, you probably drafted him as your backup. So does it kind of depend who else you got going?
Yeah, I think that's what I've said this before. I think I drafted Jordan Reed in 3 of my 4 leagues and Kelce as the backup. So right now I'm starting Kelce in 3 of my 4 leagues.
And dropping Reed in the rest.
I've dropped Reed in every single one of them right now just because of the other roster spots with running back and receiver
Niles Paul
needs.
has been doing pretty well in his absence.
He has, absolutely. And I would have liked to have picked him up. But
Kelce or Niles Paul this week? Niles Paul playing Thursday night against the Giants.
I think I'd go Niles Paul. I think he's got a larger role,
more
even though he just has a larger role in the offense. Every week, Kelce's getting a little bit more looks, but you still have Paulson there. Not Paulson. You still have Fasano there, who's getting still getting the catches and everything like that. So I think I'd probably go Niles Paul.
Steve, who would you take out of those two?
Well, guys, I was responsible for ranking the tight ends this week. So
All right, yeah.
That's true.
In my shameless plug, I had Niles Paul 5th and Travis Kelce 11th. But,
Yep.
I mean, I also have Travis Kelce starting, which I certainly wouldn't have, maybe not even up until this week. So
Right.
Right. And
the Kelce train's definitely gaining steam, and I have him as a top 12 tight end
much
this
like
week.
the Bortles train.
There you go.
Oh, true.
With Steve, I don't think it's quite as running as fast. Yeah.
I did forget to mention that we do our weekly rankings as well as lay out our high-lows on nextlevelradioonline.com. Just go to shows, Primetime Fantasy Football blog, and you'll find it there. Leave us a comment, tweet us, let us know what you think of the rankings and our high-lows. Steve, have you been posting these on your blog as well?
No, I haven't done the weekly rankings,
Okay.
but it's a good idea. I certainly can.
Okay. Well, either way, check out Steve's blog, StevenRichards.net.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Kelce, 19 snaps in week 1, 32 in week 2, 47. So he's up to
Right.
65% of snaps. So, like you guys said, I have no problem putting him in. Now we go to the Reds, and we each kind of had a hand in the Reds. Andre Johnson.
That was all
That
me.
was Joe.
That
4
was all
catches
me.
on 11 targets. 4 catches on 11 targets.
Well, okay, the positive I take
astronomical.
away, the reason I was so high on him is because the
'Cause of the
targets have
targets.
been there every game, and
If
he
he
has
had points per, if it was PPT league,
Yeah, how
he'd be
about
looking
it?
pretty good.
And
only
he had not
24
found
yards,
not
yeah.
found the end zone yet, and I just said I figured week 3 it's his
You
time.
could say the same thing this week.
Yeah,
I think he's actually. Did he make it on someone's high list this
he
week?
did not make it on mine.
No.
You're damn Skippy, he did.
Yeah, all right. Well, I guess we'll talk about that. But yeah, so that's all my fault. I had him on mine, and I started him in a couple leagues, and
we
was
can
not
talk
happy.
about his week 4 matchup a little bit later.
Yeah.
Then only 2.4 points last week. Sammy Watkins. Steve was high on him. Joe was low on him. So I mean, we should do this every week. Everybody just pick one high and one low.
Yeah.
On the same guy, and we'd be doing
about
pretty
it?
well. Sammy Watkins, 2 catches on 8 targets. So again, the targets are there for him as well. 19 yards for 1.9 points. We'll talk about him in a little bit as well. Doug Martin did not play, so that's kind of a wash. Now to our lows, where we did really well. We went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. 1
All right.
yellow. Matt.
It's a lot of soccer points.
That is a lot of soccer points. If you're in hockey, that's even more points. Matt Forte was a low, only 7.6 points. I think he made it on Steve's list. Kind of a bold pick there.
Yeah.
Putting any or any guy like that. 7.6 points. Good job there, Steve. He plays the Packers this week. They gave up the fifth one, number 5 to most to running backs this year so far. Is he kind of in for a bounce back week this week?
Absolutely. I mean, especially where you draft him at, most people would probably draft him in 4th spot, maybe 5th or 6th if you were lucky that he fell to you. I mean, you can't sit him at this point. It's still only week 4. Don't overthink it. If you got Forte, put him in there, especially against a Packers defense that's struggling right now.
Start them studs. Moving on to Andy Dalton. That was me and Steve, right? Steve, you had him on your list?
Yeah, I think 2 of us had him.
169 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He actually had more reception touchdowns than throwing touchdowns in this game. 1 catch for 18 yards and a reception touchdown. 3 rushes for 3 yards. 13.86 points. You take away that reception touchdown, even less.
Right.
He has a bye this week, so no worries about that. And that was even with, and we kind of were low on him because he wasn't going to have A.J. Green. That was with A.J. Green.
Right. Yep.
Maybe not 100% A.J.
I
Green,
think
but
it was a matchup too, wasn't it? I think.
yeah, against the what were they? The Titans, right? And they blew him out, so it's kind of weird that he only had that many points. Next, Marcus Wheaton. I think that was on mine. 4 catches on 5 targets, 35 yards for 3.5 points. He plays the Bucs this week, so far giving up the most to wide receivers in 2014. I actually think he's in for a little bit of a bounce-back week. I think both him and Antonio Brown have a good week this week. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sold on Wheaton. I mean, I think he's going to be up and down, and if you have to have him in your lineup, and some weeks you're going to be lucky that he's in your lineup, and other weeks you're going to wish you started somebody else. Antonio Brown, I agree. I think Antonio Brown may be one of the the top guy. He's one, obviously not maybe. He's one of the top wide receivers right now. Him and Ben are just on point with each other. If you've got Antonio Brown, you're not benching him.
No. And by the way, Marcus Wheaton, 34 on. I did the wide receivers this week, 34. So just low end wide receiver 3 for me this week. But I think he has some upside of maybe low end wide receiver 2.
Sure.
And Antonio Brown, I believe I have inside my top 10.
You should.
I sure do. He's fifth.
Yeah,
Fifth on
10
my
would be
list.
good. Yeah, he's borderline top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Steve, anything to add for Wheaton or Brown?
I don't know. Wheaton's kind of a boomer bust at this point for me. But if you're playing boomer bust, then the Buccaneers, you're not going to get a better matchup. So if you want to take a shot and you need home run points, then you could look at Wheaton for sure.
Yeah, especially with a lot of buys this week.
Yeah.
Sammy Watkins, Joe had him on his low list, so Joe 1 point, Steve 0 points.
Way to go, Joe.
2 receptions on 8 targets, as we said before. He plays the Texans this week. How do you guys feel about Sammy this week? Maybe a bounce back, or kind of is what he is this week? What do you think?
I don't know what to think. I just with EJ Manuel, I think he's going to fall under the category of you're just never going to know when to start him. I mean, the guy's a freak of nature. It wouldn't surprise me if 1 week he puts up 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the next 2 or 3 weeks you get nothing from him. So I think that's the hard part of knowing when to stop him, and that was my whole point of putting him on my low list, is that I just don't think he can be consistent. I just heard so many people complaining the week before. I could have won, but Sammy Watkins was on my bench, and that when I hear that, I know they're thinking I'm going to put him in my lineup the next week, and I just thought that's a bad idea. I just didn't see him being able to replicate that production. So we'll see.
Steve, how about you? By the way, Texans are right in the middle of the road, about 15th to wide receivers this year.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing that Joe said in a different way. For the rest of the year, you'll never see Sammy Watkins on my high list. You'll never see Sammy Watkins on my low list. You'll never see Sammy Watkins on my zero to hero list. And you'll never see Sammy Watkins on my don't buy the hype list. I'm done guessing with him. I don't have any idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, because if you get it right, it's just pure speculation.
Yeah,
I have no idea. And 15th most wide receivers with the Texans, that's about right, because Sammy Watkins is... You just throw your hands up in the air and say, okay, middle of the road. That's what Sammy Watkins will be for the rest of the year.
Yeah, moving on, we got Monte Ball. Joe had him on this.
It was easy against the Seahawks.
Yeah,
there's not much to talk about
this week, so no, not starting him anyway. Same with Andre Ellington. Bit of a different call there. That wasn't quite as easy. 18 rushes, 62 yards, 3 catches on 4 targets for 13 yards, 7.5 points.
It hurt me to put that on there because I've been on the Ellington, and I started him in the league, and I was lucky enough to win with him even in my lineup, but I just wasn't expecting much.
Yeah, he is. He's also on a bye this week. Next we have Sean Green. I gave a yellow, even though he was rescued by a touchdown. 10 rushes for 33 yards. Playing the Colts this coming week. 7th most to running back so far for the Colts. Even though it's a bye week, are you playing Sean Green this week? Especially after Bishop Sankey had the same amount of rushing attempts, Joe?
It really just depends on the way your roster is. I mean, this week I can definitely see him creeping his way into some lineups because of all of the top running backs that are going to be on a bye. But I think that I just think Sankey's going to see a little bit more of an increased role, and I think Sean Green's going to just kind of be what he is. There's 10 to 12 rushes, 30, 40, 50 yards. I'm not expecting much more.
Steve?
Yeah, I hope I'm not.
Right.
I don't have Sean Green, so I'm happy I don't have to make that decision. I'm looking at our running back rankings. I don't think I see him in the top 30.
I did not put him in the top 30.
Yeah, so which is a good call. I wouldn't. The Colts are pretty good on defense, and I think Sankey is the better play only because of potential. I'd rather have Sankey than Sean Green, and I would try to avoid playing Sean Green if I can.
Now, what if Jake Locker does not play, because he's kind of a question mark at this point? If he doesn't play, does that increase possibly both of them, Sankey and Green, point-wise? Because I would assume they would try to rely a little bit more on the run. I mean, even though they got kind of blown out last week, they still managed 28 rush attempts. That includes 6 from Locker. But what do you think if Locker doesn't play this week? Does that make you a little more confident or less confident, or it doesn't really affect you?
I look at it, but I think that they're going to try to stick to the run, which is good, but I think that also means that the Colts are going to probably put more men in the box and going to hope that who is the backup? Is it Mettenberger?
I think it's Charlie Whitehorse.
Charlie White.
I wish it was Mettenberger.
Yeah, I think you're right. No, I think you're right. That's why I think the Colts are just going to say, Whitehurst, come beat us. We'll put 8 guys in the box. We'll stuff the run, and let's see if they can outpass us. And I don't think he'll be able to do that.
Steve?
Yep, what Joe said.
Okay. Yeah, and it is Charlie Whitehurst.
I like White Horse better.
I do like that.
That's like Niles Davis.
Riding in on the White Horse.
Dare you to beat us, White Horse.
Right.
Okay.
Next up, Antonio Brown. This was a miss. 10 catches on 10 targets, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Hey, without the touchdowns, 9 points. He plays the Buccaneers this week. They gave up the most to wide receivers in 2014. Kind of talked about it a little bit. Top 5 receiver for everybody this week, or at least potentially?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. Let's recap our 0 to hero. I gave myself a yellow here because I know we mentioned if you don't hit 20, it's not quite counting. Drew Brees, 293 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 rushes for -2 yards for about 19.5 fantasy points. At the Cowboys this week, 14th most quarterbacks this year. Probably their defense probably isn't as good as 14th most quarterbacks. Like they probably should be under or top 10 points to quarterbacks.
And with Drew Brees here, I mean, I agree that
week, I think.
I agree that you gave yourself a yellow because we're kind of making 20 as the cutoff. But you know, if you just think Drew Brees, you can almost consider that just because of who he is and where you drafted him, that is a red. You know, not being able to even get close to 20, to be under 20 points.
He's trying to give himself greens and me.
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm just trying to work that in there for my point total. But it's just I can imagine Drew Brees owners got to be pretty disappointed. But I think this has to be the week that you're going to see a big number from him against. I mean, even if the Cowboys are really the 4th best against quarterbacks, I mean, this is going to be a shootout the way that we saw week 1 with him in Atlanta. And I think if I got to go Drew Brees against Tony Romo, I'm taking Drew Brees 10 times out of 10.
Yes, I agree. Steve, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think it was more of an anomaly that Drew Brees was a 0 the week before, and then it was a 0 this week. So if you got Drew Brees, you play Drew Brees, and it's kind of like Joe said. I mean, you expect 20 points, but he was right around there. So it was a good call by you, certainly, to make him a hero because he's a hero more often than he's not.
It's probably an easy call. I don't really give much credit for that.
Yeah, sure, like Monte Ball against the...
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Next up, Pierre Garçon. Steve nailed it here. 11 receptions, 16 targets, 138 yards, and 1 touchdown for 19.8 points. Plays the Giants on a Thursday night. They give up the 5th most to wide receivers in 2014, although quarterbacks generally, except for Matt Ryan, which we'll get to in a second, struggle on Thursday nights. No issues starting him this week?
No way. No, he's the thing that I'm happy about is week 2, I think he had 1 catch for maybe 12 yards or something like that. So I think a lot of people were worried about Garçon and his usage. And last week, 16 targets. And if you, obviously, as the Eagles fans, the 3 of us are, we watch that. I mean, he was looking for PR the entire game.
Captain Kirk.
Yeah, so I think if you've got Garçon, you're starting to feel a lot better about him being on your team. And even though it is a Thursday night game, I just don't think you can sit him unless you are just stacked at wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree. Steve, same thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have him at 11 on my rankings, but easily could move into the top 10.
He can go top 10 for sure. Yeah. Let me see what we got.
If it weren't a Thursday night.
Yeah, if it weren't a Thursday night,
right,
you'd be top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
But that always, and I know some people do prove that as an anomaly, but more times than not, Thursday nights end up affecting you.
Yeah.
It's just a short week. Next, you got Matt Ryan, speaking of Thursday nights, played on a Thursday night last week against the Bucks, and it was an absolute blowout.
Oh, it was a terrible
286 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 rush for 2 yards.
And that was in 3 quarters.
23.6 points in only about 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Did he play 3 full quarters? I thought they pulled him out in the third.
I don't even know if he made the end of the third quarter.
3 full, at the Vikings, 4th least to quarterback so far in 2014. You going to ride the Matt Ryan wave, or are you not expecting quite as much this week from him, Joe?
Oh, I think Matt Ryan's going to be big again this week. I think, especially with a new quarterback starting in there, I think the Vikings offense is going to struggle.
Don't bash Teddy.
I like Teddy Bridgewater. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you're talking about his first NFL start as a rookie against
Cordero Patterson, top 5 this week. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I was just saying, it's bold. It could happen, but I wouldn't have put that in there. No, I mean, obviously, you've got Matt Ryan. You're playing him. The only way I can think of, maybe you drafted Matt Ryan and maybe like Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
And then you can think about Rivers against Jacksonville
or what
this
if you
weekend.
have Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins?
I'd take, because of the Thursday night matchup, I'm going Matt Ryan. But I think there's a couple guys that you can obviously put ahead of him. But if I'm one of those guys that rarely drafts a backup quarterback if I can get a really solid running back, and I did get Matt Ryan in one league, so I'm riding him. There's
Steve,
no way.
What about you?
The fella, for those who don't know, that does the tight end rankings also does the quarterback rankings. So I've done those as well, and I have Matt Ryan 3rd, so I like that.
Where'd you have Phillip Rivers?
How about that, Matt?
4th.
All right, so that's a good one. So you would go with Matt Ryan over Rivers?
Barely.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Okay, I think I think I would have that switch, but it would probably be 3-4 for me. But
yeah,
he's got him above Cutler, Rodgers, Luck, Foles, Cap, Kirk.
The biggest fear with starting a quarterback against a team that you know is bad is that when they get up so big and it's a blowout, they either run the ball, they pull him.
Yeah, but you know what helps Matt Ryan? The fact that they cannot run the ball
they
to
can't.
save their life.
Right.
They just can't run block well.
No.
And that
offense is really a passing offense.
I
Julio
don't like having any running back on that team.
No.
Not even, Steven Jackson, he's untradeable.
Remember when Devontae Freeman was like the talk of the rookie?
I think you guys watching Hard Knocks.
I may have been the leader of all those talks. I agree, but I'm just saying. Remember when we were talking about that, and now he's not even talked about.
You know what? He did get a decent amount of touches in garbage time in this, and he didn't do much with them only because they knew they were going to run the ball. So I don't hold that against him at all. I just, I think everybody's maybe a year early on him. I think you look at him next year.
Maybe.
Let's move on to Don't Buy the Hype. Nailed this one. Antonio Gates, 1 reception on 1 target for 8 yards for 0.8 points. Thank you very much. Plays the Jags this week. They gave up the most to tight ends in 2014. Looking for probably a bounce back week. I think you get a good 10 points out of him this week, guys.
I think everybody on the Chargers should get you at least 10 points at the very minimum. So yeah, you start Antonio Gates.
Now, this is going to be a shootout with Bortles in there.
That's true,
right, Steve?
Yep. You better pick up Allen Robinson too, you fools.
I actually would agree with that. I don't know if we have him on any list this week, but Marquise Lee, I don't believe was practicing today, and I think he's moving ahead of Hurd on the depth chart. I forget, but he's definitely come on in the past couple weeks. And Cecil Shorts, with his injury history, there's a chance for Allen Robinson to lead the Jaguars in receptions at some point. He played 42 of 60 snaps last week, so it's pretty good considering he only played 20 in week 1 and 30 in week 2. Right. So, let's move on to Terrence West. Gave Steve a yellow for this one. 12 rushes, 36 yards, and a touchdown. 2 catches on 2 targets for 5 yards. A touchdown also kind of saved him a little bit. 10 points. He's on a bye this week, so not much there. Other than that, Crowell is kind of there's lingerings of him moving ahead of West on the depth chart, especially even when Ben Tate comes back and Ben Tate to remain the starter. So keep your eye on that. If Crowell's not picked up in your league, he should be.
He needs to be owned in all leagues.
And if you can find someone who will buy high on West, by all means, I would be fine with you doing that.
The only issue you're gonna have with that is because he's on a bye right now.
Yeah, but nobody's gonna.
But if you could, I would sell high because if Tate comes back, I think they're gonna offer him not offer him, but I think he's gonna be the starting running back. Right. I mean, I think you can really. I think it's reasonable that in week 5, Terrence West is the 3rd running back.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question. Next hit for Joe, Stephen Ridley, 19 rushes, 54 yards, 1 catch, 1 target, 7 yards, 6.1 points. They play the Chiefs. As we mentioned earlier, 11th least to running backs this year. In this bye week type of thing, are you still plugging him in if you have him?
I think you may have to. I think with all these running backs that are out, you may have to plug him in there. But he's another guy. I'm glad that he hasn't fumbled yet. I like that he got 19 rushes, so the numbers are there, what you're looking for. I remember saying as the week went on, when I put this in there, I was worried about, I don't know if I should have put Ridley in Buy the Hype. I mean, he's playing Oakland. We saw what Foster was able to do the week before. I probably shouldn't have put him in there. And then by the end of the game, I thought, nope, that's exactly why I put him in there. You just have no idea what you're going to get from him week to week. Although the reason I had him in there is because I kind of just thought that Belichick would maybe go the opposite way and go with Shane Vereen.
Right.
He actually got the carries. That's what you want. So I'm not I didn't see the game, so I don't understand why those numbers were so low. I guess Oakland just had their number for whatever reason.
And even with that, Oakland's 6th most to fantasy running backs this year.
Mm-hmm.
Even with that type of game, they did pretty well against fantasy point wise against the Patriots.
Maybe they just realized Tom Brady is not the Tom Brady we remember in the past, and maybe they just would challenge him to throw.
Yeah, I don't know. Stephen Ridley, anything to comment there, Steve?
I guess I'll create this club live on the air, the I Give Up Club. Sammy Watkins is the president, but Stephen Ridley and Shane Vereen are the co-vice presidents.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you or which one to pick. But the Chiefs is not a good matchup, and they're at the Chiefs. That place actually kind of rocks. They have a pretty good home field advantage.
Do you think the Patriots are on upset alert this week? This is kind of not fantasy related, but.
I could see that. The Chiefs are a good football team
they
won a bunch of games last year. Yeah. So, I think that for sure. I think the Patriots are on upset alert. I don't know what the line is, or if we're allowed to talk about betting on this podcast. But
Sure, yeah, you can talk about what the hell you want.
but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the line is, but I can find it pretty quick. But yeah, I think they're definitely on upset alert as far as real football goes. Where are we here?
Monday night.
Oh, it is Monday night. Oh, home dog at night. Kansas City. Put all your money on it.
What's the spread?
All of it. 3.5.
3.5.
Chiefs are a home dog.
Home dog. 3.5.
Home dog at night.
Yeah, actually, you know what's funny, and we can probably do this down the road. But I was thinking even we can kind of put together a team of the week.
That's kind of
but we can do like a weekly team of the. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. All right. Well, let's move on to week 4. All right, for our high lows this week, we're only doing 2 to save on time. First up on my highs, I have Terrence Williams. Hasn't had a fantastic year, though he does have 2 touchdowns in 3 weeks. Playing the Saints this week, they're 9th most to wide receivers this year. Murray's lost fumbles in 3 straight games. I think it's all with any really good coach, and sorry, Jason Garrett, but like Belichick, John Fox, he would have been benched at this point. And I think if this continues, they're not going to be able to rely as heavily on him. He's getting a lot of carries. He's probably could even, get injured pretty soon. So if you have him, I would try and pick up Lance Dunbar soon. But
I don't even know. I don't know if Dunbar is the guy you want. It may be Joseph Randle.
Yeah, I'd still prefer Dunbar between the two, though.
Well, you may do it, but I don't know what the coach. I think the coaches preferred Randle.
Okay.
But I mean, that's something we can look into more. And that I was actually just going to bring that up is because we had talked earlier in the rankings when we talked at the beginning of the year about drafting DeMarco Murray at the end of the first round. I'm hesitant just because he always seems to get injured. The most he's ever lasted in the year, I think, was 14 games. I think he's right now the number 2 running back in standard leagues. But
you have him ranked first for running backs.
I do today, this weekend, So,
but
I mean, going forward,
carries last week,
right?
Dunbar did not have any. Randall did have 2, but I still think
right there that
could go either way.
It'd probably be more of a committee.
Yeah,
but it seems like from some of the stuff I've read that Randall's the guy that they really like there. So I think if you are a Murray owner and you've got the spot, I'd at least go get one. Whatever one you think is going to be the guy, I would go with Randall. But I think he needs to get on your team now because, right now Murray, I think, is the 2nd leading running back in standard leagues, only behind Marshawn Lynch. So if you lose him right now, that'd be a pretty big loss.
Steve, between Randall and Dunbar, who would you pick up if you had to pick one up?
I'm on Dunbar a little bit still, but I haven't really watched that much Cowboys actually, to be honest. So I'm not sure. I would do my research if I was DeMarco Murray owner. I would just see because it's probably out there.
It probably would be more of a committee type thing, honestly, and they probably just go with the hot hand. But I do think in this game this week they'll need to go to the air often to keep up with that Saints offense. So I'm high on Terrence Williams. Also, I'm high on Lamar Miller. At the Raiders this week, they've given up, like I said earlier, 6th most to running backs this year. Not a very good defense. He's run the ball well this year in Marino's absence. 5.8 yards per carry.
I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, that's not something that you expect. He's kind of laid low. Joe has him 6th on his rankings this week.
I did. I couldn't believe I put him in there because if it was either last week or the week before, I said, I think someone brought up Lamar Miller. I said, who cares?
Yeah. Did you feel dirty putting him in there?
I did. I didn't like it. Now, the only thing that makes me worried is the fact they're over in London.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, most times it's rained a bunch of times, and there's a lot of times
it's usually a messy game. Yeah.
It normally is a messy game. But, against the Raiders, how do you not have him in your top 10, especially with all of a lot of the studs being out this week?
And plus the Raiders are coming from a much further distance to London than Miami.
That's true.
So that could play a part in it.
He only knows that because he has a globe in his room right now.
I do. Steve, Steve, how about you with Lamar Miller this week? Are you liking him?
Yeah, for sure. I actually...
By the way, that's a 1:00 game.
Yeah.
In London, yeah.
Yeah.
Adam got his picks in first in this. We put all of our picks in an email and collaborate. He got his in first. I actually had Lamar Miller written down. But since Adam had it first and we only pick 2 guys a week, I just wanted to pick somebody different for something different because we have another another twofer on our highs, so we didn't want to have too many guys the same. So, but Lamar Miller is definitely somebody that I have on my radar, and I actually have him on a team, so I'm excited to see what he does this week.
Yeah.
Who's on your high list this week, Steve?
Oh, I kick off with Donald Brown, another running back. He's got Jacksonville. We talked about how we think that every Charger might score 10 points this week, so he's definitely got a good matchup with Jacksonville. He's a clear lead back at this point in San Diego. They said they were going to do it, and they have done it. They carbon copied whatever Ryan Matthews is getting. Is what Donald Brown is getting.
Well, now that Woodhead's on IR too,
man.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's all
true.
Donald Brown all day, all the time.
Yeah, even more, which is even better, for Donald Brown owners. Jacksonville was bad against the run last year. They're worse this year. They're just not a good defensive team, really. And they'll be in front early. The Chargers will be, so there'll be a lot of running involved, no matter how much Phillip wants to change the play call at the line to a pass, because he loves to sling it. But there'll be a lot of run calls, and Donald Brown's going to get a lot of chances, and he's probably going to do a lot with those chances. So I'm high on him, and I'm also high on Crabtree in San Francisco. He's at home against the Eagles. I think he's back to where he was a couple years ago. I know it probably takes a while to get over the injury he had, but he's been good so far this year. Kind of quietly, at least for me. I don't know if it's a West Coast, East Coast bias thing, but I haven't really noticed how good he was, but he's been pretty good this year. The Eagles secondary is the opposite of good, they think. And the 49ers are at home, so there's always a comfort level there. I think it's good for the Niners offense. They're talking about how the Niners don't have any identity on offense, but I'm not giving up on Crabtree yet, at least. So I like him for this week, playing the matchup a little bit. So what do you guys think? We'll start with Adam and go to Joe. So Adam, I got Donald Brown and Crabtree. So where are you at?
Yeah, I'm totally on board with Donald Brown, and I'll discuss my feelings on Crabtree. Spoiler alert, he's on my Don't Buy the Hype this week.
Oh, God.
Joe?
I agree with both of your. Obviously, my high guy is Donald Brown. When I looked around, I wanted to try to pick somebody different, but I just thought that Donald Brown was a guy that we probably never would have thought coming into the year we'd rank.
It's funny
in the
because I almost put him on mine, too.
Right. Well, if you thought about it, if I would have said to you in the beginning of the year, do you think Donald Brown will be a top 10 running back any week this season? We all would have said no.
You know what? No, because...
Nostradamus over here.
Well, I mean, would you ever put Ryan?
If you said any week, I'd
Yeah.
say maybe only because we said before the season about Matthews' injury history.
Yeah, but I don't think I ever would have put Ryan Matthews in a top 10.
That's a good point.
So that's my point.
I actually looked at his schedule and saw he's playing Jacksonville, maybe, but
at the beginning of the year, I may not have done that because of Gus Bradley as their coach. I really kind of expected their defense to be a little better this year. I guess without the talent, that's not possible. But anyway,
I think we all did know, though, going into the season, he was a serviceable backup.
Absolutely,
he did well in Indianapolis.
But even
serviceable backups don't finish in the top 10 during a week, though.
Right.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. So I don't have to. Steve said it all already. Donald Brown, and then who else did I have? I have Colin Kaepernick. Basically, the same reason you have Michael Crabtree. I just think if you've got a quarterback that's playing the Eagles, start him. That defense and that secondary.
You could have gone 0 to hero on Cap.
I could have. Maybe I'll add him in my 0 to hero. I just think it was rough to watch Kirk Cousins look like a Hall of Fame quarterback last week, almost throwing for 500 yards. So I think they're going to be able to. Kaepernick's be able to throw on him. He can run. And if the defense is getting tired, like Kerry Williams says that they're getting tired, and they're not getting off the field. Here's what scares me about this game as an Eagles fan, is that I see 3rd and longs happening, Colin Kaepernick dropping back. He sees a lane, runs, gets the 9 yards he needs, slides. Defense has to get back up and do it again. And it scares me that could happen all game. Kaepernick running, getting the 3rd down. So even if he's not doing it through the air, I see it happening both ways. So Donald Brown I agree with you, and he's on my high list. And I got Kaepernick because he's playing the Eagles.
Yeah, and actually I lied. Cap had a pretty good week last week. He had about 19 points. That was the week before I was thinking of.
Okay. Steve, what do you think? Well, obviously we know about Donald Brown. What are your thoughts on Kaepernick?
Yeah, I'm with you on Kaepernick. I mean, Crabtree can't be high if Kaepernick isn't. So.
Right.
So I agree with you, and it's actually, you have a stat here written down that no quarterback's been under 20 points in a standard league against the Eagles yet this year, which is a really telling stat.
I think that happened last year.
And you're talking about Chad Henne.
Right.
Was one of those quarterbacks that was over
Kirk
20.
Cousins.
Right. So
exactly. So I mean, it's tough to, like you said, it's tough to watch, but And I like what you added about the running aspect as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to...
always a threat there, so
he's going to rack up points on the ground this week for sure. I do agree with Kaepernick, and I'll tell you why, about why I can be high on Kaepernick but not as high on Crabtree later. But let's get into the lows. I have Cam Newton on my low list. You won't see him on my low list often because I'm a big Cam Newton fan. But at the Ravens this week, they didn't call one zone read play last week. The Panthers didn't. They need to let him run, and until they do, I just, I don't see him being the dynamic, quarterback that he's been fantasy-wise. I mean, he has his main thing. I mean, he's a great passer. He's got an arm, but I mean, him with the run just makes him a great fantasy stud. So the Ravens are actually pretty good against the pass, so I'm a little bit low on him this week. I also got T.Y. Hilton against the Titans. He's only catching about half of his targets, and he has not had a touchdown yet this year. So I like Reggie Wayne actually on that team better than T.Y. Hilton. Joe, what do you think about Cam and T.Y. this week?
I agree with you on Cam. I think he's a little injured. I still, with those ribs.
And ankle.
An ankle. So I think he realizes it, and he's trying to stay in the pocket a little more. So I don't know if it's – I think they're not calling the zone read play because I think they're trying to keep him protected. So I agree with that. T.Y. Hilton did practice today. I was surprised. I actually kind of thought he would be out this week. And you mentioned Reggie Wayne. Here's another guy. Don't sleep on Hakeem Nicks. If T.Y. Hilton's limited or out, Hakeem Nicks is going to add to this offense. I mean, and right now you've got Andrew Luck, who's the top quarterback in all of fantasy. The guy's just passing all over the place, tons of yards, tons of touchdowns. Most people already have T.Y. Hilton, so then they're probably starting them. Keep your eye on Nicks.
Steve?
Yeah, going back to my quarterback rankings, I have Cam Newton 12th, which is, if you drafted Cam Newton, that's a down week. That's a low week for Cam Newton. So I think that's a good pick. And I guess even if you're in a 10-team league, I'm saying don't start Cam Newton. But I'm a big Cam Newton fan as well, so it's tough to put, just like you said. But I'm definitely low on him for all the reasons that you said. And then I've never been a T.Y. Hilton fan, to be honest. I don't know if it's common knowledge, but I certainly see that Andrew Luck is a quarterback that does the most with the least. The fact that he's even a top 10 quarterback, let alone, I think, Joe, you said he's number 1 right now. He's always a top 5 quarterback. So T.Y. Hilton just doesn't, I don't know. He just doesn't do it for me.
He's a boomer bust.
Yeah, I agree. And he's definitely, I like Reggie Wayne a lot more, like you said, so I'm right in your camp there. As far as who I have for my lows this week, I did a twofer here with both Reggie Bush and Joique Bell.
We said 2 players this week. He still manages to pick 3.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. Yeah, I did the Lions running backs. They're playing at the Jets this week. As far as Reggie Bush is concerned, he's a boomer bust every week at this point, the way I see it, and this is a bust week. The Jets are good against the run. That's a pretty known fact, and they're really bad against the pass. That is a known fact, and the Lions are going to throw it a ton.
And Calvin Johnson alert.
Yeah, no kidding. And along those same lines, Bell just isn't enough of a pass threat for me at this point, and I don't know how much success he's going to have on the ground. He wasn't targeted last week. I know he's had a few weeks where he was doing pretty well through the air, but he wasn't even targeted last week. So
yeah,
Reggie Bush had a good week last week, and Joique Bell didn't, and that probably contributed to it. And I kind of see the same thing happening again. And then I'm also low on James Jones this week. They're playing the Dolphins. This one surprised me a little bit, but the Dolphins are good against wide receivers, at least fantasy-wise. I didn't know that they had a secondary like that.
Yeah, I think we talked about it week 2. They were last year at least they were good. And
yeah, which is interesting. I didn't know about that, so that was something I learned this week. But James Jones,
the more you know.
And the Raiders aren't good, so that's a breaking news alert there. And Jones is their only option they have at wideout, so the Dolphins being a good secondary, apparently, they will key on James Jones, at least I think they will. And he'll be shut down, and they won't really have any other options, and the Dolphins will win, and James Jones won't do as well. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with all 3 of your 2 picks. Bad week, I think, for both Bush and Bell. I think you could see one of them do pretty decently, but your guess is as good as mine. Put them on your guest list this week.
Yeah.
And then James Jones, couldn't agree more. I just, Derek Carr has not shown too much this year, and I say this every week, but I don't like any Raiders. at all. Joe?
Yeah, it's tough to bet. I agree with your the running backs there. James Jones, there's just something about him. I think every week he's doing something. Last week he didn't do much. He only had 3 receptions, 43 yards. But, I mean, week 2 he had 14 targets, 112 yards, a touchdown. It's against Houston. But, Miami, they are good against the pass. But, I mean, you had week 1, Edelman had over 100 yards. Week 2, Sammy Watkins had over 100 yards.
That's true.
So I could see, and who else are they throwing to out there? So by default,
Streeter.
Streeter, and is he injured? I think
He's for Temple U.
He was, yeah.
I think Streeter may be injured. So if that's the case, I feel like someone's going to catch the ball in there. So I may disagree with you on that. And normally, anytime you put
yeah, he's still Streeter's going to be out another 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, so I think anytime you put an Oakland Raider on there, I'm most of the time going to agree with you. But I think in this case, I think I may roll the dice with them. But, hopefully.
More breaking news. Joe's disagreeing on an Oakland Raider.
Yeah, how about it? But hopefully you've got enough wide receivers that you're not having to start him this week.
Lots of buys this week.
There are lots of buys. So, I'm going to, for fun for the pod, I'm going to disagree.
League.
I'm going to disagree. Okay. If I had an extra high.
Yeah, we don't all have to agree with each other.
You know what? Maybe if I had an extra 0 to hero, I'd put James Jones in it.
All over.
Are you recording this, Adam?
No.
All right. Good. You can't.
When
I'm wrong Joe. Next week.
Go into your lows.
All right. My lows. Tom Brady. What the hell happened to him? It's unbelievable. He has not faced a top-rated defense this year. I mean, Miami, I guess you just discussed, is not bad. But Minnesota, Oakland, and he has struggled. I think if you're in a 10-team league, you can drop him. Wow. I mean, as long as who's out there. Depending on who's out there. I'm in one 10-team league this year. Every other league I'm in, it's 12-team. And I was actually looking at the waiver wire today because I thought I'm done with Tom Brady. Unfortunately, I'm in a league where everybody drafted backups. So who is available is terrible. I'm thinking I'm looking to try to get – I'm actually trying to get a trade for Colin Kaepernick because I think he'll be great this week. I told you about that trade. I'll have to look to see if Bortles is available in there.
If you draft him, he will come.
Yeah. But I think Tom Brady, I mean – I do really think, depending on who's available and on the waivers, drop.
I will just like James, I will disagree with that.
I drop him.
Brady.
Okay,
yeah.
that's all right.
I might not play him this week, depending who my backup is. But I don't know that I drop him. But keep going.
All right, and then I've got this pains me to say, but I've got McCoy on my low list this week. I hope I'm wrong, but McCoy has not gotten off to the start that a lot of us had hoped. Week 1, it was okay. I mean, he had over 100 total yards. But last week he's been shut down. He's got 3 new interior linemen. They've reshuffled the line. You got Todd Herman's moved out to the right. So these 3 new guys right in the middle will be the first time these 3 have played together this season.
Their offensive line is just...
It's unbelievable. I mean, when you think about the fact that they won last year...
one guy left?
At one point, they had 4 new offensive linemen in there. Herman's was the only one. So
against the Redskins, they ran out of backup offensive linemen. They were down to their last one.
Right.
Because Peters got ejected.
Yeah, so I think in San Francisco's tough. I mean, they held Ellington last week to 62 yards rushing. So I think week 1 they gave up a bunch to, because I think in my stat, the last 2 weeks San Francisco is not allowed a running back to rush for more than 62 yards. So I hope I am wrong on this. I will be happy to put this in red, and you can tell me that I was wrong. Because if McCoy does well, that's good for the Eagles. But I have a feeling they're gonna blitz that A gap and do a bunch of stuff in there to stop McCoy. And,
do you even know what that means? I feel like you just wanted to say blitz.
Football talk.
No, A gap. You're talking right in between the center and the guard. Come on now.
Gaps on us now.
Come on. I'll teach you something.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's gonna have a great ground game this week, but I think they're gonna try and get a little more touches for him through the air. So I do think he still puts up some decent numbers. So I'll disagree with you a little bit there. And obviously, you're not gonna bench him.
No, you're still playing him.
So, Steve, how about you?
What is the number threshold for Joe hitting on LeSean McCoy? Because I feel as though he has different standards, being LeSean McCoy. So when Joe says LeSean McCoy is going to be low, what's my number where I can say if I agree or disagree?
That's true. Do you want to stick to 10 or you want to go 12?
I'll be honest. I will say. Now, here's the hard part.
Go under 10, Joe?
Where I put him in my rankings, I have him at number 8, which is actually a pretty low ranking for someone that you probably drafted number 1.
For LeSean McCoy,
right? And if I rank him where I actually think he's going to finish, I put him at 8 just because if you've drafted him, you're starting him. So for me, putting him where I really think he's going to finish, and maybe I think he could finish back in towards the 20 spot.
Okay.
I don't think he gets double-digit points this week.
Okay, Joe's going
So I'll say 10. I'll say 10. Set the bar
Okay.
at 10. Do you go over under 10 for McCoy this week?
I go over.
I go over.
Oh,
10.
I hope both of you are right. I really do. This is one I want to be wrong on.
But let me say this: that I when I doing my research, I was gonna put LaShawn McCoy in, and I said nope, I don't want to jinx it. So I agree with you in the sense. I think I'm still gonna go over 10, but if it was 12, I might, even though it's only 2 points, and
Right.
that sounds trivial. I think you're in between 10 and 12, so I don't think that it's a bad call for low as far as LaShawn McCoy standards go.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it still could go over 10.
I'm going to go 12.62 points this week.
I love that. I
Write
hope.
that down.
Yeah, I like
Yep.
that.
In a
Fantastic.
standard league.
And then with Tom Brady, you pretty much said it all. I'll just reference the quarterback rankings that I have, where I have him 13th. So
Right.
I don't have him as a starter this week, even if you did draft the backup in some cases.
Yeah.
So I would agree that Tom Brady has fallen off, and that's tough. But if you drafted him, at least if you were excited about Tom Brady as your quarterback. But I agree with you guys.
Thanks for listening to Primetime Fantasy Football. Send your questions into primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. And make sure to check out our weekly rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com, and go to the Primetime Fantasy Football tab. We'll post a link on Twitter and Facebook at NXT Level Radio or facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline.
Hey, it's Rick Hoffman from Suits, and you're listening to Next Level Radio.
He was a no one, a 0-0. Now he's a hunter. He's a hero.
Prime Time Fantasy Football's 0 to Hero.
0 to hero, just like that.
I'll kick things off for 0 to Hero this week. I have Shane Vereen. We talked a little bit about this is kind of I think for me personally, maybe a bit of a bold pick. Playing the Chiefs, Ridley getting more carries at this point. But I just think Vereen's always a threat, especially in a PPR league. I do think it's Bill Belichick. So, I mean, Ridley could fumble on the first play. And not that I'm saying that's going to happen, but I just think Vereen does have a good week. I mean, he's had a couple sad ones in a row. And I think he's just going to have a good showing on prime time.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have. I don't think I have much to add to that. I think you've nailed it. I think it just wouldn't surprise me though if he's not the guy. But I think with especially PPR, he's hard to sit in a PPR league. But I'd like to see that happen.
Steve?
The vice president of the I Give Up Club, so I don't know what to tell you, but I could see it happening for sure. And if Ridley does fumble on the first carry, then you get 1,000,000 points and win the podcast.
There you go.
For as far as my 0 to hero, I went with Andre Johnson, who was actually, I believe, was it he missed on somebody?
Yeah, I had him as a high last week.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm kind of banking on the same thing that you were last week, Joe, in that the targets are there. He's another. I thought the Bills were good in the secondary. Actually, it was kind of the opposite of the Dolphins. I thought with McKelvin and crew they had there, I thought they were good in the secondary, but it turns out they aren't good against the pass. So I think this is the remedy that Johnson could need. He's had a slow start this year. There's no denying that. He hasn't been good at all this year.
And if he doesn't do well this week, I'll put him on next week, so we have 3 chances to.
Somebody will get him eventually.
He's got to hit eventually.
And if I'm not mistaken, if you look at his schedule, he started off with a pretty solid schedule for.
Solid as in difficult, or
as somebody that if you drafted, you were hoping that you'd get some big points out of him early because I think his matchups look good, and he just hasn't capitalized.
DeAndre Hopkins has been good 2 weeks.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, he has been doing well.
So we're gonna go with Adam. Do you agree?
On Andre Johnson? Yeah, I mean, he's gotten to a slow start. I do think he is maybe on the decline of his career, and
sure,
DeAndre Hopkins is a nice guy to keep your eye on. But I mean, he's gonna have a good game at some point here, and it's only a matter of time. So you're not, in no way am I thinking of putting him on the bench anywhere.
How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's just going to get his at some point. And, it wouldn't surprise – I don't think he's this type of guy, but, we saw Larry Fitzgerald come out and basically make a complaint about – or maybe his dad did more of it for him, but basically saying how he's not getting the touches and all that stuff. And you're seeing DeAndre Hopkins have a lot more success right now. maybe he doesn't do it publicly, but I wouldn't be surprised if Andre Johnson's talking in-house saying, I need to get the ball more. I need more opportunities. And, the targets are there. It's only a matter of time before he is the zero to hero.
Are you buying on DeAndre Hopkins, or are you trying to sell high? He's had either a touchdown or double-digit points in standard leagues all 3 weeks.
I think I'd hold on.
Are you riding the train?
I'm riding the train.
High?
I mean, listen, everybody was talking about him as a rookie, and he didn't really pan out, but everybody talked about the talent and everything like that. Maybe now this is what we're starting to see. Maybe this is a guy you want to keep on your bench. Maybe if you need running back help, you're hurting there, you drafted Adrian Peterson or Ray Rice or something like that, and a guy struggling at receiver, you can turn that into something. But if you're okay, I'd hold on to him. Okay,
well, I'm obligated to mention Kelvin Benjamin in every podcast. So would you rather have DeAndre Hopkins or Kelvin Benjamin?
That's a good one. I think,
for me, it's Benjamin only because he's the number one option on that team.
Yeah, I think I'd probably take Benjamin as well.
Fitzpatrick throwing it to him.
Yeah, I think I like his quarterback situation better, and I think you're right with the number one option.
But the fact that you had to think about it shows something about what DeAndre Hopkins has done so far.
Absolutely, yeah.
Joe, who's on your zero to hero this week?
It's got to be Eddie Lacy. I was talking about him all preseason. I thought that he was a guy that I thought we could reasonably see him end up as the number one running back in fantasy this year. I thought they were getting him involved in the passing game a lot more, and we haven't seen that a lot. But if he's going to do it, the Bears is the defense he needs to do it against. I was a little surprised when I looked up. I don't think they're known for having a great run defense. I know last year they were terrible. But a little
better this year.
They are. No individuals had more than 61 yards. However, they've kind of faced two of the three teams they faced were more of a committee. So you had Spiller and CJ and Fred Jackson. Both had so for week one, Spiller had 53 yards, Jackson was 61, and then you had Anthony Dixon had 1 yard run for 60 yards. So I don't really count that much in. Frank Gore week 2 had 63 yards. He was the only guy who had any rushing yards. And then last week you had Ivory and Johnson and Bilal Powell get close to 100 yards.
Right.
But I mean, Lacy's just too good not to, and he was been challenged by his coach this week that he needs to play better. If you're an Eddie Lacy owner, this is the week
he's going to do it.
And if it doesn't happen, you need to be a little worried.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning we were saying, it's only week 1. It's only week 2.
Well,
tough
he
matchups.
Has had some tough
He's had
matchups.
3 tough matchups. If it's not happening this week, you need to be worried.
Steve?
Yeah, I'd hate to disagree. For those of you who don't know, Joe is our Packers correspondent for FantasyPros.com. But I don't know, man. I think James Starks looks pretty good. At least to me when I've seen him, and so I don't know. Maybe if they like to conserve Lacy for later in the year. Although, what are they waiting for? Because they don't look good at all as a team.
No.
But, I don't know. I just don't know that I could classify him as a hero. I don't know that he's shown it. I think James Starks looks good, so I'm going to go on the other side of the fence here and see what happens.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go to our Don't Buy the Hype, and disagreeing with Steve's one of his high list. I have Michael Crabtree on here. It is a tantalizing matchup against the Eagles, but I actually think the 49ers spread it around this week against that weak secondary, especially if Vernon Davis plays, which it looks like he might be on track to. Now, that's today, a Wednesday, so by Saturday he could be out for 6 weeks. But I think if he plays, that obviously hurts Crabtree's value a little bit. And this feels like a Anquan Bolden game to me for some reason. Like, this would be a game that Bolden, has like 100 yards and a touchdown or something. Bolden has like a couple quiet weeks, and then he just has a huge game for some reason. Like,
there was a couple games last year where the top receiver that the Eagles played wasn't the guy that hurt them. It was like Eddie Royal did hurt them against San Diego. So you could be right on that.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that he very well could have a very good week, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did. But I'm taking another kind of bold statement here and going, I'm saying I think Bolden will have more points than Crabtree this week, and I could be way off, obviously. But Steve, how about your Don't Buy the Hype or your opinion on Crabtree? Well, actually, we know yours. So, Joe, what's your opinion on Crabtree?
I think I agree with one thing you said, that I think the 49ers are going to spread it around. That does not mean that Crabtree still can't have 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that means he could have that. Bolden could have that. Right, exactly. So I'll be honest with you.
My mother could have that.
Right. I am buying the hype this week, so I'll disagree with you on that one. I'm in Steve's camp.
Steve, let's go to your Don't Buy the Hype.
Absolutely. I'll go with Steelers running back. As the league says, you can't get high on a running back, but I have Garrett Blunt. against the Bucs. I'm not buying that hype. He did well last week. His points came, but it was on a 50-yard garbage time run in the second half. That's what gave him a bunch of points. He had a touchdown as well, but most of his yards came on a 50-yard run in garbage time. I think I like kind of along the same lines as James Starks, I guess, but I think Le'Veon Bell looks slim, and he looks quick.
He looks good, yeah.
Yeah, and the Bucs are terrible. They're awful. The Bucs are terrible.
Yep.
But they're a good run defense. Like if they do one thing, that's what they do well. So I think I just don't trust LeGarrette Blount at this point. I think Le'Veon Bell is definitely in the number one at this point. So I'm gonna say don't buy the hype on Blount.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. And actually, unless I'm a Le'Veon Bell owner and I'm like have him in case Bell gets hurt, I don't want Blount on my team just in general. Like there is no week that I would feel confident starting him. I mean, he's gonna have a game like this where he had 50 garbage yards and a touchdown. He's gonna have a week where he gets 2 carries for 7 yards, and then that's gonna be it.
Funny story, and you can cut this if you want. I had a guy in a money league.
I don't edit this podcast at all.
Good. I had a guy in a money league. One of my good friends. He probably won't listen, but I look at his lineup before he starts, and he has Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount in his lineup, in the same lineup, and he sat Steven Jackson
last week,
and he ends up winning because of that. And he's bragging about how this great coaching decision. And I'm like, it was probably. I mean, first of all, who are they
playing? Did he call himself a coach? That's a violation right there.
Yeah, they were playing the Panthers. I mean, there's no reason that either one of them should have done as good as they did.
Right.
I think most people were surprised that both running backs had that kind of success. And so he was kind of bragging about, man, it worked out. I was like, that was the worst decision I've ever heard. I can't believe it worked out for him.
That's the greatest blind look I've ever heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And he won because of it.
You know, I wonder if there's been studies done. If you do the complete opposite of how it should happen, if you do better than you do if you play it how it actually should happen. Well, let's go to your low this week, Joe.
So I put Lorenzo, don't know how to say his last name.
Taliaferro.
Taliaferro.
By the hype. Sorry,
okay,
So
the reason I put him in there is he actually did look pretty good last week, had a good week. Bernard Pierce was out, but now today Bernard Pierce was practicing again. I think Forset's still going to be in the mix. Although Carolina gave up 2 big games to their as we just talked about, Bell and Blount last week. Carolina is a tough matchup. I think this is a guy, especially if you're struggling at running back, and a lot of guys on bye. If you have a spot on your bench, this is a guy to take a chance on.
Right.
Keep him on there,
stash
him.
He was a big waiver grab this week.
He was. So
but don't start him.
I would not think about starting because Bernard Pierce does not look good. However,
he had a good game a couple weeks ago.
He was okay, but he's gonna get the first chance. He's gonna get the first crack at it, and I think it's gonna take a big fumble, a mistake to really make Taliaferro ready, or somebody that you can feel comfortable.
Give me the order of who you'd want most on the Ravens running backs.
I'd still, if we're talking if I'm talking for the next week or two, it's still Pierce.
I just meant rest of the season.
If I'm talking rest of the season, I'd probably rather take the chance with Taliaferro because Bernard Pierce, you didn't draft to be one of your top running backs. He's probably a bye week replacement right now. So right now, I'm okay with him. But if you're talking I have to pick one for the rest of the season, I'd take Taliaferro because of his upside, I think, is bigger than Pierce.
Bottom for you?
I had Forsett at the bottom.
Steve, how about you?
Yeah, Joe, I love everything Joe's saying right now because I agree that Carolina's a terrible matchup and you shouldn't play him, but I wavered Taliaferro in both of the leagues that I'm in. So I have him for that stash bench spot. So,
yeah, and I did put that in my notes. If you have the spot, go for it, but he's not the starting running back.
Yeah, I have no problem stashing him. You know, I would, if I, had the space on some rosters, I would have wavered him or had the high waiver pick.
Sure.
But I just think for the rest of the season, I'm still on the Pierce train as the guy I'd prefer to have for now. I want to see how this week goes, and then maybe I'll change.
I think this week's going to be telling. Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. Well, let's move on to Dig It or Ditch It.
Prime Time Fantasy Football Presents. Dig It or Ditch It.
Can you dig it?
First up, we got Jay Cutler. He's playing the Packers this week on Yahoo. He is projected the second highest scoring quarterback this week, only to be surpassed by Drew Brees. Steve, I guess we kind of know if you're digging or ditching that due to your quarterback ranking, so I'll let you start it off anyway.
Yeah, I wish I could dig it. I love Jay Cutler, and I have Jay Cutler, but I'm ditching. I have Jay Cutler as 5th on my list behind Breeze, who I do have number 1, so I win there. Stafford is 2, Ryan is 3, Rivers is 4, and then I have Cutler 5th. So not second highest, but he will certainly have a good week because Jay Cutler is awesome.
Joe, digging
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ditch it only because, I think when you're playing a matchup in division against the Packers, I mean, even though the Packers haven't looked great this year, that's going to be a tough game. It's going to be
he's going to have a couple turnovers.
Right, and he's going to get hit a bunch. I do think he'll be top 5. I like where Steve ranked him as the number 5 guy, but not number 2, so I'm ditching it.
Yeah, I'm going to ditch it as well. Basically just reflecting everything you guys just said. D'Angelo Williams plays at the Ravens this week. Is he a legitimate bye-week fill-in? No Tolbert, no Jonathan Stewart. Cam's not running the ball. So is D'Angelo a bye-week fill-in this week? You digging or ditching that, Joe?
I'm digging that, actually. I wouldn't love it. I would probably vomit in my mouth if that was my guy in my starting lineup. But everything you just said, you've got Tolbert out, you've got Stewart out. He's going to get the majority of the carries. It is a tough Ravens team, but if you're really desperate at running back, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, and he did return to practice today, which is Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, they at this point Wednesday.
Yeah.
He's looking like he's going to play.
I mean, I hate saying that's a dig it when my response is you could do worse, but that's really the way I feel.
Steve, you digging or ditching?
That's a ditch for me. When all 3 of those Panther running backs are healthy, they fall in my I give up club. But with him healthy, I still don't like the matchup though. If you got somebody, I think you could maybe even be able to find somebody with a better matchup than the Ravens. I'm just not. I'll ditch it.
Okay. Simple. Yeah, the Ravens are actually kind of a tough matchup, but just because he's the only one, I'm going to have to dig it. Tampa Bay was a kind of tough matchup week 1. He ran pretty well, 14 carries for 72 yards. Yeah. So I'm gonna dig it. And I think it's mainly because of all the bye weeks, though, because there's, 6 teams on a bye this week. So let's move on to our last one, Martellus Bennett against the Packers. He's been a top 10 tight end each week so far. Week 1, he was 5th best. Week 2, 8th, and last week, 3rd. Do you see him digging or ditching him a top 5 in Week 4? Green Bay, by the way, so far, least points to tight ends this year. But he has been so good with Jay Cutler on the field. So, Joe, you digging or ditching him as a top 5 this week?
I'm digging it. As long as they keep doing what they're doing right now, you can't even think about sitting Bennett. I think top 5 easily.
And Steve, I guess we kind of know your answer as well because of your rankings. I really should look into these questions a little better, but go ahead, Steve.
No, this is fun when you ask me to rank people when I already have the position ranked. This is easy. That's a dig for me. I have Martellus Bennett ranked 2nd behind only the superstar, so that's definitely a dig it for me. He, like you said, he's been good. And it's been interesting to watch because he wasn't really that highly touted. I was excited about him, but I didn't get him in a league because he was taken before. But I like all the Bears, and Martellus Bennett is certainly not excluded from that.
I'm actually going to flip the script. I'm going to ditch this. I just think it's going to be a tough matchup. Hopefully, Marshall and Jeffrey get a little more involved this week, and Forte. So I just think that it's going to be a little more around the horn for the Bears this week. And I think the Packers being as good as they are against tight ends and maybe focus on Bennett, take him away a little bit, knowing the other 2 guys are injured. So I'm actually going to ditch it. Just outside the top 5 for me, but definitely still starting him.
Now, my only argument to me, who's their best tight end that they faced so far, the Packers?
I don't know.
Exactly. Zach Miller, week 1, 42 receptions. Jeff Cumberland,
42 receptions?
Yards, week 2, and Joseph Foria. So I don't think they've really faced
You provide a good argument. Right. I'm going to say 6th best tight end this week.
All right, that's fair.
My guns.
I know.
Let's go on to Take Your Pick. Only a couple guys on Take Your Pick this week, and then we'll wrap things up. Victor Cruz at the Redskins. He finished 8th among wide receivers last week, but this week he's projected outside the top 25. Victor Cruz, inside the top 20 or outside the top 20 this week? Take your pick, Joe.
I'm saying inside.
Inside the top 20.
Inside the top 20. Thursday, I don't care.
It's the
inside.
Redskins.
It's the Redskins. I for whatever reason, and I have no basis for whatever reason, I don't feel like this is going to be a typical Thursday night game. I think we're going to see some actual fantasy production tomorrow night.
I think you're wrong. Steve?
Outside. Is that my inside, outside? Yeah, outside.
Yeah, inside, outside the 20. Take a pick.
Yeah,
outside.
whatever. I hate Victor Cruz. Next.
I'm actually gonna agree with Steve on this one. I'm going outside the top 20, maybe outside the top 25. Actually we have a couple. Mike Glennon will go to, and then we'll go to our bye week fill-ins. Take your pick, Mike Glennon. With him at quarterback, take your pick. Does it help or hurt Vincent Jackson, and Mike Evans' values? Joe.
Hurts.
Hurts?
Yeah, it hurt me to say that. That's
It sounded like it. Steve?
Yeah.
I got help. He's better than McCown.
Okay, so you're going help. Yeah, I'm going to actually help too. All right, so
that's the way this goes.
Definitely help Jackson. I don't think it affects Evans at all, but definitely helps Jackson because I think they had a little, they played together last year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And he did relatively well. Had a couple 2-touchdown games.
I'd like to point out the fact that Adam created this question and then picked a help and a hurt. So
right.
That's a good point.
Little known fact: in one of my leagues last year, I made it to the Super Bowl with Mike Glennon as my quarterback.
Nice.
Take your pick. Gonna happen again this year?
Nope.
Bye week fill-ins for running back: Steven Jackson or Trent Richardson. Take your pick, Joe.
Oh God.
Neither. I'm gonna send an illegal lineup. You know what?
Do you want their
still.
matchups?
I'll tell you right now. Trent Richardson for 2 games
against the Colts.
No, he plays for the Colts.
He plays for the Colts.
Trent Richardson against the Titans. Steven Jackson against the Vikings.
Trent Richardson's 2 games in a row has actually looked okay. I think he'll be better, and by better, maybe 60 yards to 55 yards.
Okay.
So I'm going to take Trent Richardson.
Steve?
Yes, Trent Richardson.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You said it. The Falcons can't run.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Trent as well. Take your pick: Kyrie Robinson or Fred Jackson this week.
Who's going first?
Joe.
I will take. I think Fred Jackson is somebody who's just been really dependent on the big play right now. So I'll take Kyrie Robinson. He's getting the work.
Steve?
I agree. Kyrie Robinson until Mark Ingram comes back. So he's going to try to make the most of his opportunity there.
Yeah, I'm going to say Kyrie as well, mainly because he plays the Cowboys this week. Fred Jackson plays the Texans. Next up, you have Bishop Sankey. I think we kind of alluded to this earlier. Bishop Sankey or Sean Green? Take your pick.
I think this week I'm probably still going Sean Green. This week only, though.
Okay, Steve?
That's not what I expected to hear. I'm taking Sankey.
All right.
Oh, man, I got to be the rubber one on this. I'm going to go Sankey only because I have him on a couple teams and I like him.
Yeah. That's a good way to do analysis.
All right, take your pick. Now we'll take the winners. Trent Richardson or Kyrie Robinson? Obviously, if I like him if he's on my teams.
Kyrie Robinson.
Steve?
Yes, Kyrie Robinson.
All right, I'll go Kyrie. Kyrie or Sankey?
Kyrie.
So Kyrie wins out of all these guys?
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with that as well.
Who are they're playing the Colts? Yeah, Kyrie Robinson.
Yeah, okay, then Sankey or Trent Richardson?
Trent.
I'll take Trent, too.
Nope, Sankey.
Oh, look at you. Sean Green or Trent Richardson?
Trent.
Okay.
Trent Richardson.
Yeah, I'm going to say Trent. Okay. All right, well, that wraps it up. I actually like that take your pick for the various running backs.
I like that, too. It's
Maybe
fun. Rapid fire, too. We'd call it rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire is taken by the Showcast. I apologize. For our interviews, we end every interview with rapid fire. So
it's Next Level Radio, though, isn't it? Like
could be a Next Level Radio thing, but I'm gonna veto that. All right, so that wraps it up for this week. You guys have anything to add before we start wrapping up?
No. Good luck in your leagues this weekend,
Steve.
Yep. Good luck,
Steve. Where will you be calling us? Where will you be calling us from next week?
Next Wednesday will be from Los Angeles.
Jesus. See,
will it really?
You think I'm joking, but he's actually going to be somewhere else.
Man.
All right, well, make sure you check out our rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com. Check out Steve's blog, stevenrichards.net. Check Joe out on fantasypros.com.
Fantasypros.com, Green Bay correspondent.
Ask us all questions on Twitter, at AdamNextLevel, at JoeyWebb32, at SRichards31. Also, tweet us your questions to get answered on the show at NXT Level Radio, #PTFF. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Next Level Radio Online. Head over to nextlevelradioonline.com for everything you need, our rankings, other shows, the showcast, other interviews. Our interview with Ben and I, our interview with Kim Coates from Sons of Anarchy, if you're a Sons of Anarchy fan, should be up there. Also, download and subscribe on iTunes, Next Level Radio, and Primetime Fantasy Football. There's 2 separate ones. Listen to the showcast. That's all podcast now, so you don't have to listen live anymore. And like I said before, check out Steve's blog. So I think that is everything on my list here that I had to talk about. That's all I got. Joe, you have nothing.
Nope.
Like you
as
do
usual.
for most of the show. Steve, you got anything else?
Blake Bortles.
Yeah, actually, before we go, let me talk about this. Blake Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater. Are you picking either of them up? Steve probably is picking up Bortles.
I'll be honest with you, the 10-team league I'm in, I have got a waiver in for Bortles dropping Tom Brady. Not Bortles, I'm sorry, Bridgewater.
Okay.
Bridgewater.
Oh.
Steve, I do like Bridgewater, but I like Bortles too. I actually think both of them are, like, if you need a backup quarterback, this would be a good week to pick one of those guys up because, Bridgewater has a little more rushing ability, but I think Bortles being young, he's still going to give you some rushing yards as well. So
the only thing it's Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got nothing around him.
Does it help Gerhardt?
I was just going to say, I think it does help Gerhardt,
Yeah,
though.
I agree. Steve, what are your opinion on the two, Bridgie and Bortles?
I'll tell you what. I'm in a keeper league, and I am trending downward toward not making the playoffs. And as soon as I'm eliminated from the playoffs, I'm picking up Bortles because he's worth an 8th-round pick. So I'm going to take a shot, and he will be on my roster as long as somebody else doesn't pick him up first. But I'd wait to see. In all honesty, I'd wait to see on both Bortles and Bridgewater. Rookie quarterbacks have done it before, but they haven't done it in a little while now, actually.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
I would check to see what they do maybe for a week or two before I go all pick up happy on them.
Yeah, and neither team is extremely
good. But I think both
good.
of them can make an impact.
Yeah, and they're not
both pretty bad, actually.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I agree. All right, so let's wrap it up. We'll see you in week 4. Again, make sure you check out nextlevelradioonline.com, and you can find the links for our iTunes and Facebook and Twitter on there as well. We will see you next week.
That sign, that dotted line, it was strange.